my parents moving us around as kids allowed me to live all of these different experiences that are true and authentic stories that then roll into kind of being me and telling the narrative of what it is to start a company. And so
What for you is that new chip on the shoulder, right? You've achieved pretty impressive success at a relatively young age. And what is that next chip on the shoulder that continues to drive you? Because it's not just you, right? It's every founder has to some extent. I mean, Elon Musk is still driven to work insane hours and do all the things he does. He doesn't need to do it for money. He doesn't need to do it for influence. He still has some chip on his shoulder, whatever it is. But what is the one that's still the new one that's driving you? And what do you see with a lot of other entrepreneurs, if they even have that chip on their shoulder, and what that looks like?
the issue with founders is that we're irrationally confident in certain things, and that overconfidence can come at the expense of learning a thing, like whether you're doing it right or wrong. So I think it's just like a constant challenge to make sure that you're willing to learn the shit while still being confident about the direction that you're going in. And I think the Nike mantra just embodies that really, really well. Like, just get out there, just do it, put on your shoes, go for the run, and you'll learn something about yourself.
So, want to welcome Tim Delisle to the Entrepreneurial Excellence podcast. I'm super excited to have Tim here because he is someone I've known for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years at this point. But what was the more exciting part about all this is I first got to know him because I heard about his company, ended up becoming an early investor. And then after that occurred, was even luckier and also challenged to become an employee of Tim's. And so I actually worked for Tim as he was building a company called Datalogue. And we're going to dig into why he built Datalogue, what that looked like, why he ended up selling to Nike, why he's building a new company. He's also built his own investment firm, and in all the different things that Tim has done to become someone who I actually really think is one of the best entrepreneurs I know. And I will say, Tim, and you'll probably smile at this, but I view you as one of the rare founders who really, and I say this in a nice way, doesn't really give a shit. Like, if you believe strongly about something that's occurring, you will make that known. But the scary part about that is not that you care strongly about something, but is that you always come with the data to back it up. So if you're going to have a debate with someone who is maybe an expert on that topic, you will have that debate, but you will also become that expert on the topic, at least to some extent. And that is one of the, I think, a rare skill set among founders. And I'm curious, we'll maybe get through this in the conversation. Is that something you've seen with other founders too, and other companies you've wanted to invest in? But either way, Tim, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Really appreciate you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So walk me through in the beginning, like, why, like, you've been an entrepreneur. I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile right here. You've been an entrepreneur almost throughout your career. But in my perspective, it really started with Datalogue when you were finishing sort of graduate school. What brought you to the entrepreneurial world in the first place? You're a Canadian guy, all this other stuff. What brought you to decide to be in the crazy world of entrepreneurial starting companies?
Yeah, it's interesting because I growing up, I would have never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. Like, I was pre-med in undergrad. I had set my entire career trajectory on being like a great clinician, and I wanted to manage hospitals. Like, I was always drawn to healthcare. And I think the genesis to the entrepreneurial journey was getting rejected from the medical school I wanted to go to. That really kind of lit a fire under me, where I made it my mission to stick it to the person who signed that rejection letter. And I still would, like, even years into the Datalogue journey, would reread that letter. So it was kind of a vindictive moment and a vindictive drive. And it's funny because I started the original company just like based off of a random thesis of going after these old school dinosaurs. Back in the days of Datalogue, we were competing with this company called Informatica, which 1990s enterprise, hasn't really innovated since the 1990s, but had this incredible foothold on data management in large organizations. And so we went up against them. Big established market. We thought we could do better. And yeah, I think it's Josh Wolf that says this, like, chips on shoulders, put chips in pockets. So like the first genesis of me getting into entrepreneurship was just driven by a relentless focus to stick it to the person who signed that letter.
Did you send that person a note after Datalogue got acquired and say, "Yep, like I've now made my impact"?
It's funny because I looked up the person once we sold, and they had moved on to another school, and it, I think achieving the milestone kind of made it lose its entirety of its drive, and so I I just felt almost shamed by this like vindictive drive to like start companies, and instead I like now there's a different fire that burns inside me, and caused by a wholly different kind of series of events, but the it kind of lost its appeal once I reached the milestone, and maybe eventually I'll be a great donor to the McGill institution. Who knows?
But there is always something, I think, new for many founders, and I actually want to dig into this a little bit more for you and the founders you've invested in and worked with too. But what for you is that new chip on the shoulder, right? You've achieved pretty impressive success at a relatively young age, and yet you what is that next chip on the shoulder that continues to drive you? Because it's not just you, right? It's every founder has it to some extent. I mean, Elon Musk is still driven to work insane hours and do all the things he does. He doesn't need to do it for money. He doesn't need to do it for influence. He still has some chip on his shoulder, whatever it is. But what is the one that's still the new one that's driving you? And what do you see with a lot of other entrepreneurs, if they even have that chip on their shoulder, and what that looks like?
Yeah, so the new chip on the shoulder comes from a very unwelcome stint back into the healthcare world. A couple years ago, my sister's kid passed away, and she she lives in Montreal, and she was getting care from the children's hospital there. And we when we knew that the kid was going to pass, the entire family, like overnight, just like we were kind of bees all over the world. We fly in, and we were welcomed at this institution in this was kind of right post pandemic, so there was still restrictions on families being able to be there, and we just got absolutely welcomed into this institution. And in that moment I saw the importance of culture in healthcare, and how this institution, this hospital, has just made it its core mission to care for mothers and babies. And you can feel that like every second of the time that you spend in those organizations. They're welcoming you. It's very, very deeply, deeply saddening to be in those organizations. And these people are incredibly empathetic. They're there, they're crying with you, they're hugging you, they care deeply for children and mothers. And I in that moment I was just like, fuck, I need to I I had been, this is after this deep into the Nike experience, and I had been reckoning with like this drive towards this original drive of vindictive, like stick it to the man sort of situation. And in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to build a philanthropic practice, and go and support those institutions. And so I'm going to die before I accomplish this, but one day I will write $100 million check to St. Justin's Hospital. And that's the fire behind me. It's why I invest in great entrepreneurs. It's why I start companies, and it's why ultimately I had to leave the corporate life, which was kind of very comfortable. But I could have ridden that out for years. But I really want to achieve that goal faster, and see the benefits of doing so.
Well, first off, and I guess full disclosure, I should have mentioned at the beginning, as an investor in your new company, I will say that I'm happily in disagreement with you. And what I mean by that is, I think you will easily live to the point where you can write that $100 million check, if not a few extra zeros after that as well. So don't sell yourself short. I think that's going to happen maybe sooner than you expect.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I I think there's just kind of a sobering thought when it comes to startups, which is like you've been in the same boat of just being able to capture an enormous amount of luck, and a lot of what we do is driven by luck. And we we're in this incredibly fortunate situation to be able to do what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I am incredibly grateful every single day, where we're hustling, we're putting in the cycles to be able to ultimately capture the luck. But at least I know that if I just sat in my living room and waited for the day where able to write that $100 million check. It ain't gonna happen. So I think put in the work and we'll see where it goes. But I think it's very sobering to just say, hey, look, we got to get lucky again. We've gotten lucky once. Now we got to do it again, and we'll put in the work to be able to capture the opportunities when they come up.
So tell me more about that, right? Where do you view the role of luck versus hard work versus intelligence in the realm of things for your own self and companies you built, and maybe other entrepreneurs too? Because luck is sort of a nice way to, I think, and throw this back at you, right? I think luck is a nice way of deflecting the credit that you probably much more deserve than you maybe want to admit that you deserve as an entrepreneur. Luck plays a part of it, but also part of it is just hard work and willingness to be in the right place to capture that opportunity when it arises.
Exactly. So like there's quotes out there like luck is whatever. Like I started getting lucky when I worked 12 hours a day. There's some random quotes. But I think that like cold-hearted analysis of this is if you take the spectrum of IQ and it's just like raw intelligence. So like let's play out intelligence or skill or whatever we want to call this, and we could use IQ as a proxy for skill and intelligence. And you plot kind of the whole population. The difference between the most intelligent person that you'll ever meet and the average is like a 25% difference. And so when you ascribe the outcome to this idea of intelligence, like the outcomes that we generate in startups aren't 25% better than the average. They could be orders of magnitude better than many orders of magnitude better than the average. And if you try to ascribe that to just sheer intelligence or skill, I think you're missing a huge component of what it means to actually build these companies. And instead, I ascribe a lot of the success that my teams and I have had over the years to just the sheer willingness to put in the extra cycles. And so like when you compare yourself to the average, like the average person in corporate America will put in like a valuable, I don't know, 20-ish hours a week, right? They're working for 40, but a lot of those hours are spent doing nonsensical work. In Startup Plan, you can easily squeeze in the 60 to the 80 hours of productive work. And if you end up doing that, you're like 4xing the volume of work that someone in corporate America actually has. And so that's where I think you end up capturing the outsized returns, is where you use these different levers and you apply the maximal outcomes there. And so I'm a big believer in hard work, putting in the cycles in order to generate the outcomes that you want, and less of a believer in the idea that like magically by being the smartest person in the room, you're going to generate those outcomes. And I think there's been studies of chess grandmasters out there where in the early days, like amateur chess players, there's a great correlation between intelligence and ELO, which is the measure of performance in chess. But once you get to the very expert level, like the master level, that relationship actually flips, where there's a minimum of intelligence that you need, but being too intelligent oftentimes leads to lower ELO. And that's because the theory behind that is the way that you become a master is by putting in the grind, the practice, and you're enduring kind of the failure modes of like growing through the ranks of the chess players. And I think that just, at least in my life, that's rung very, very true. Putting in the work, willing to like step on the shit that you knew, and kind of constantly reinventing how you're attacking the problems, how you're coming up with solutions, is so much more valuable to me than just like having the insight to magically come up with a solution from sheer intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, look, ideas are a dime a dozen. How you execute is the critical thing for every business out there. I mean, we all have, I'm probably everyone down the street in my neighborhood has an idea of what they wanted to go build, but none of them actually ever get off the couch to go build it.
Yeah.
What do you think then? How do you identify that across other founders, this idea of hard work? Because I'm sure every founder you and I know and talk to would say, I am a hard worker. I work harder than the average. And it probably is true. They probably do work harder than their average classmate from school. But yet there is still a difference between the 90% who fail and the 10% who have some level of success. How much of that is ascribed to? So everyone, maybe that use that ELO score as an example, every founder probably is already in that high level of intelligence, but there's something that separates them. Is it that willingness to work that much harder? Is it luck? How do you define it?
Yeah, the honest truth is I have no idea. The I've been investing for a much smaller amount of time than you have, and I think it's too early to say whether my track record is good or not. Right now, what I look for is founders who are just constant learners, and that's essentially I look for something that I pride myself in doing is just like being able to learn and constantly grow. And I think the my current portfolio reflects that a lot. It's a lot of founders who were inexperienced but had a ton of learning potential, and some of them seem to be learning in the right direction. Others, who knows, they're learning in the wrong direction, but they're smart enough that eventually they'll bring their businesses back on track. And so to me, kind of the initial part of my portfolio was just kind of taking shots on goal, trying to understand what my investment philosophy was. And now that I'm writing slightly bigger checks and kind of considering potentially bringing on some LPs into like a little micro fund, the my thesis behind investing is now very theme driven, more so than just raw founder driven. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity for new breeds of founders to come up through the ranks, especially with AI kind of enabling new fields and industries to be completely disrupted. So now I try to be a lot more calculated, a lot more theme driven. And if I get to meet great founders across those themes, I really enjoy putting checks behind them.
And that then leads to, so maybe pushing still on that idea of like what is the difference between like luck and sort of skill or hard work. One of the theses I have and internally has been a great driver of successful investment returns is investing in a growing wave. And what I mean by a wave is essentially like, if you surf a little bit, right? So if you want to surf a really good wave and there are no waves, it's really hard to go surfing. You're not gonna do much besides just
Exactly.
sit there and float on your
Exactly.
surfboard. You need to have a wave to actually surf it. And so you can invest in the smartest founder in the world, and they can build the best team and best product. But if there is no wave, it's irrelevant. And so how do you think that plays into maybe the difference maker between the 90% who fail and the 10% who succeed?
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately that's just a function of price, right? So if it's a very obvious wave, then kind of the wave is going to get priced into the investment anyways, and that's going to wash the returns. I think, especially in venture capital nowadays, the information is a lot more widely available. Like investing in this wave is the information is a lot more dynamic than even investing kind of in the cloud wave or even before that the mobile wave. So I I think this idea of being able to predict the waves and ride them is interesting, but I'm curious to see what and how these waves kind of unfold. Like the crypto wave has left a lot of people hurting. I know you did incredibly well on that wave, but like today, if someone was trying to ride that wave, it'd be very difficult. So being able to catch the wave when it's kind of early and it's just like starting to peak over the horizon is I think the difficult piece. And so I personally don't think I have the investment acumen to figure those things out. I tend to think in more broad and boring terms. Like I like to make investments in technologies that are incredibly hard and have low market risk, but high execution risk. So like that kind of tempers a little bit my ability to predict what waves are going to be unfolding. And there's a lot of investors out there, like the Sutter Hill folks, that have done incredibly well investing in some of these more kind of boring categories of work. Think Pure Storage and Snowflake, where sure there was like an underpinning thesis and kind of re-architecting moment that the world was going through, but at the end of the day they were betting on really big markets and high execution risk bets, and I respect them a lot for the type of investment they do. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew how to catch waves. I tend to really suck at surfing in the ocean, and I tend to surf behind a boat where the wave is very easy to control and very easy to anticipate. And so that probably mirrors a little bit of our
I mean,
investing
maybe it does.
style.
Although using that analogy for 2 seconds, if you can create your own wave, that's even better than having to wait for another one to occur. So that's maybe the best
Yeah.
entrepreneurs create their own. Like Elon Musk created the wave of electric cars. Like that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, and I think we tend to focus on kind of the big crazy outcomes, but like we look at a company more like Amplitude that really pioneered kind of product analytics, like that's a tried and true category creation playbook. They've done incredibly well for themselves and their investors. And yeah, like as you say, if you can create your own wave, that's really interesting. And I just don't want entrepreneurs out there to think that like you gotta go after deep, hairy, capital intensive problems that Elon's got the energy and stamina to tackle. I think that for the average entrepreneur, finding things that are less capital intensive and more centered around high margins is a tried and true way of at least if it's going to be your first one or two out of the gates, like find businesses where there is that high margin profile, because having the patience to do $1 billion capital investments is not for everyone.
Not for everyone, but the themes that Elon has, and I think these are ones actually that you have too, in my opinion, knowing you, is once again, and you sort of said this, the willingness to go deep on a topic
100%.
and to work extra hard to make it become a reality. Like those are two sort of generalized principles. It doesn't have to be billion-dollar industries that you can still tackle and be really successful in.
Yeah, I totally agree. The I think the themes of hard work and kind of really the I think the YC folks talk about the Airbnb founders as cockroaches. Like there is a sense of resilience and grit that exists in entrepreneurs that I think Elon really embodies. I think the the idea of kind of celebrating those innovators and idolizing them is cool for if you're getting started out of the gates, but it becomes less cool when those entrepreneurs that we idolize start spewing nonsense. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, Elon has a lot of issues, which are really sad for me because he is someone to look really up to as an entrepreneur. But as the world's richest man who doesn't give a fuck anymore, he's a little bit less someone
less aspirational.
Yes. So I actually want to jump back into like your history and past and walk us through that a little bit more. So you wanted to go to medical school. Was that because of your parents? Like, was that driven by any familial things, or is just you wanted to be in that space?
No, I was a pretty shitty kid. I had terrible grades growing up, and we used to move from country to country. My dad was like this turnaround expert, and so we lived a life of expats most of my life. And we changed schools once or twice a year, once every other year is probably the average. And throughout that journey, I was really kind of a lost youth, and my parents had this rule: you got to get a job during the summer, and we lived in Mexico for a couple of years, and I didn't have a visa to be able to get a job, so I decided I was going to go volunteer at an orphanage. And I spent most of my summer cleaning poop off the walls because the kids in orphanages somehow love painting walls like that.
It sounds like they had a lot of probably pent up anger.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the reason why they just love spreading pieces around, but there's this one mission that really kind of managed the orphanage that I was volunteering at. They're called the Back to Back Ministries. They're a religious group, and I just happened to work there as like an atheist, and I was painting this fence next to this guy who was next to me, and he started talking about the reasons why he was there. He refound God after being molested as a child by a priest, which was very puzzling to me, but besides the point. And we started talking about why I personally was there, and I was just like, well, it's something to do with, there's not really any drivers. And he was asking me about my career aspirations and where I wanted to go with my life. And I told him flat out, like, I don't know. Like, I suck at school. I used to get bullied all the time. That's why I do MMA now. And I was so lost as a kid, and we were painting this fence, and he's like, well, what do you like to do? And I was like, I like doing what we're doing now. I like helping people. I did a bunch of construction during that summer, and so like I like building things and getting dirty and like cement and like building shit. And he was like, well, you like helping people, you like getting dirty with your hands. Have you thought about being a surgeon? I was like, I hadn't, but like that sounds cool. He's like, yeah, like the human body is an interesting thing. And it's like, oh, I like interesting things.
Legit.
And so he's like, you see the people down in the field, they were just like below us, like they're doctors, go talk to them. And so go down, go talk to these doctors. I'm like, hey, like heard your doctors. I want to be a doctor. That was the day I decided I was going to be a doctor.
Crazy.
And these doctors look at me, they're like, oh, cool. Like, how are you doing at school? Blah, blah, blah. And at that point, like my GPA was like a 2.0.
Wow.
Like it was as
Real
low as
bad.
one could go without getting kicked out of school.
Yeah, seriously.
But I had this opportunity to kind of reinvent myself because I was changing schools again. And it was like, I'm a terrible student, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, you got to be a great student to go to medical school. And entering into that, like summer is over, like I have more conversations with these guys, and then summer ends and I start school. And I made it my mission to go and be a doctor. And so I went from a 2.0 from my previous school to graduating with a 3.98. And I just put in the work. I just remember the grind of like studying algebra. I was so bad at math. And I was like putting in the effort to like go and do AP math. And like I graduated with a pretty damn good GPA. Then I went to undergrad and started doing things. And I just ended up kind of losing focus in terms of my career and wanting to be a doctor. And started companies while I was in undergrad. Turns out if you want to, I went to McGill and it was just like everyone wanted to go to medical school. So it was a very, very competitive field. And I lost touch with how hard it was going to be to get into school. Started a bunch of companies. And at the end of the day, just like barely made the cut into their MD MBA program. And I was right under the cut for the program. And so I ended up needing to pivot my career. So went from wanting to be a doctor to like needing to completely reinvent myself. And like the first kind of big pivot of my career was in school. And so I went to one of my professors back in the day. I had the opportunity to go do my MBA at McGill. And I sat down with this professor, Professor Ray. I love the guy dearly. And he says, you can't be inbred, buddy. And I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, if you go to undergrad and then to grad school at the same school, like that's academically, that's gonna be less favorable for you. Because I had this opportunity to go to Cornell for a master's in health administration. It's like, look, you're passionate about healthcare. You're essentially going to learn the same things you're going to learn in this MBA, but with a healthcare focus. So like, go do that. So I ended up getting into Cornell, doing their MHA. And there I met some absolutely incredible people. The head of the program, Sean, was just like an absolute incredible human being who ended up writing an angel check into Datalogue later in the later years. Hopefully, Sean did great there. Julie, who's like the head of admissions, was just such a wonderful human being. And I got to meet all of these different people in healthcare. And I hated everything that had to do with business or the drudgery parts of business. So I liked finance, but I really hated accounting, like with a passion. And there was this other thing that I just was incredibly dissatisfied about, which was I was learning about how deeply messed up the American healthcare system was. But I didn't really feel like I had the skill sets to really kind of solve the problems. Like clearly technology was going to play a massive role in modernizing the American healthcare system. And like, to be clear, the healthcare system is terrible relative to the other industrialized countries. It's like 10 times more expensive. And like, it's like the bottom of the totem pole in terms of health outcomes. And so I was like, I need to learn these skills, taught myself to program, like jumped in and started doing a bunch of CS courses. Stupidly enough, for those who've been to Cornell, I took 3110, 2800, and 3410, which are like the three hardest undergrad classes that you can take. I took them all in one semester. Ridiculous.
What were you thinking? Or you just didn't know, or what were you thinking?
I was thinking I'm going to pivot into engineering. And so I'm going to go learn these software skills to like learn how to make a dent in this problem. And I applied to Cornell Tech, got rejected, like immediately got rejected. And I can't find this email, but I remember like pushing back on the rejection, something like, hey, I reject my rejection.
I reject your rejection.
Yeah, it was a stupid thing. But Deborah Estrin, who's currently one of the deans there, saw something in me and allowed me to join her kind of founding class in health tech. But I had this healthcare background. So I ended up taking like double the number of CS classes that the MEngs were taking. And so I ended up essentially getting a master's in engineering degree without doing an undergrad in CS.
Not
And
bad.
yeah, it was like I weaseled my way through shit. And I had my thesis was in machine learning. And so I keep joking with like a lot of the people who are talking about the AI craze and how it's been happening overnight. It's like, yeah, it's overnight after 10 years. And so I wrote a thesis around using ConvNets for regular expression, for learning regular expressions, which eventually became kind of the foundational pieces of Datalogue's technology stack. And that's where I met Nick, who like today is the godfather to my child, was one of my core business partners at Datalogue, and currently runs an incredible engineering group at Nike. And like I met a lot of the people who I'd go on to build up my careers with, and I met them at Cornell Tech. Ended up raising some money while I was still in school, and then Siobhan Zillis and Chip Hazard ended up cutting me a check while I was still a full-time student. Raised a little bit of money, and then that's all she wrote. Like
I mean,
that's the start
okay,
of Datalogue.
so you made it sound sort of easy. Okay, yeah, these amazing people just wrote me some checks. You know, I'm still in school, shouldn't have even been in that program basically, and I'm still in school, and people are writing me checks. It's not that easy, or maybe it is, but it requires a certain set of skills. Like, what do you think the things were that made Chip and Siobhan see in you that you were somebody to invest in versus all the other probably amazing people who are at Cornell Tech or all the other amazing wannabe entrepreneurs at every other university in the country?
I mean, we'll have to ask them. I wouldn't necessarily claim to know. I think to Chip's credit, like I was 25 back in the day, and Chip was like the experienced person. Like Siobhan was the first person to write a check, and she was like, "I need you to talk to Chip." And I remember walking into Flyber's just incredible investors. They've got a great batting average. I remember walking into their Manhattan office and telling Chip, I'm going to go and sell products to like these really incredibly large organizations like the DuPonts of the world and like these crazy big companies. And I just remember the look that Chip had on his face. I'm just like, yeah.
If you're
And
completely full of shit, you have no idea what you're talking about.
well, yeah, a little bit. And to his credit, like throughout the entire journey, I think he had an incredible acumen to like know what real progress was. And like I'd always tell him, like, Jim, like the contract's like 2 weeks away, blah, blah, blah. It was like we'd just been talking to the customer for like a month. And so like I'd walk in, he'd be like, good luck. But he was always asking the right questions, like who have you talked to? Like how are the deals unfolding? So he could like tease out that forward momentum and progress was made, but not the things that I thought were going to happen. Like he had the experience to see around these corners. I didn't. And throughout the entire journey, like when I called him for support, he was always there to support us, whether it was more capital or additional just kind of friendly founder advice. And I've learned a ton from him, and I learned a ton from Siobhan. And I to this day, I just remember like an initial call after they wrote the first check. I called Siobhan. It was like having an absolute panic attack. The money had just wired, and you're like 25 and broke as shit. And like $1.5 million show up in a bank account for the
Very
company.
weird feeling.
Super weird feeling, and just got instantaneous panic attack. And I was like texting her, but she picks up the phone, calls me, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And she's like, look, just go hire people you trust. That's all you need to do. Relax, go to sleep, hire people you trust. And that's what I did my entire career. And to this day, it served me incredibly well. And so what did they see? I don't know, but I do think they picked up on just like someone who's going to be a cockroach and see it through. And yeah, that's what I did.
And that's, I mean, that putting myself in their shoes a little bit to some extent, right? I would imagine part of what they saw and part of what I love in any investment that I make is a level of confidence, even if it's complete bullshit confidence. But the bullshit confidence as a founder comes from a place where you actually believe that you can do this, right? You might even know it's bullshit, but you also legitimately believe it. You've convinced yourself
Yeah.
that I can make this completely crazy idea that hasn't ever existed in the world before a reality.
Yeah.
And you are someone who, whether you're faking it or making it, I don't know, but come across with a high degree of confidence. And people say, Tim, one, has the confidence he can make this happen. Two, he can answer every single one of my questions with a intelligent answer, a thoughtful, intelligent answer. And that combination is one that, frankly, a lot of founders don't have, right? They might know all the answers, but they're really not good at articulating it, which means they're not maybe good at then telling a story to hire a team or to get their customers, because you have to have all those pieces line up. Even if you might be technically the best in the world, but if you don't have the rest, you might still fail.
Yeah, and look, I think the idea, like, storytelling is a huge part of being a great founder, and
100%.
I do think that over the years that served me decently well to like
Yeah.
tell a good story, and whether it came from like justifying to my mom why my knuckles were broken because I'd done something stupid, or just like trying to weasel my way out of a tough spot back in when I was a kid. Like, who knows where I learned to tell good stories. But I do think that's an important piece, and I always encourage entrepreneurs around me to tell their story. Like, I think you kind of knew this, but like, I never put together a deck, raised $18 million in capital at Datalogue, and we never had a PowerPoint. And we did it on whiteboards, and it's an incredibly compelling part of storytelling. And Nick and his company, his previous company before Datalogue, he was going around and just getting CTOs across Manhattan to sign dollar bills. It's kind of a letter of intent. They had a hard time convincing them to sell a proper letter of intent, so they were like pulling out $1, getting them to sign it, and just like putting them in shoe boxes. And just imagine being a VC, someone walks in with a shoebox, sets it on the table full of signed dollar bills of these CTOs want my product. And it's just like an incredible story. And so I think it's this storytelling is a huge part of fundraising, because it's then what you use for convincing employees, for convincing investors, for convincing customers. But I think the most kind of grateful thing I'm just incredibly grateful for those experiences is my parents moving us around as kids allowed me to live all of these different experiences that are true and authentic stories that then roll into kind of being me and telling the narrative of what it is to start a company. And so, sure, everyone has kind of their narrative flair, but I think a huge part of my stories are authentic and kind of driven in realities that I've lived, and that might differentiate me from the pack, just having had the opportunity to live so many different experiences that most people wouldn't put their kids through. So
Yeah,
incredibly grateful.
There are probably so many founders who don't maybe have that same authentic. I mean, I think every founder has some authentic thing that they're pushing for.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's different, of course, in every way, but living sort of who you are is a key part, and not being willing to acknowledge that and understand it. Walk me through. So you founded Datalogue. I want to talk first about like hiring the team of people. You mentioned you believe in hiring a team of people you trust, and that was the advice Siobhan gave you, and it's something you followed throughout your career. How do you find people you trust? I mean, like, your company suddenly gets 10 people or more. You only have a network maybe of 10 really, 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 really amazing people. You need to hire outside of that network, of that trust network.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you do it? How do you identify those people?
It's funny because I'm hiring now for the new company, and I got this very specific question from a candidate, and I thought it was a brilliant one. This candidate had asked me, like, how do you find great people? And I was like, I don't really know, but what I do know is that the track record of success, the most successful hires that I've made, I've had a very long, I'll call it courtship, with those hires, where we'd gotten to know each other, we'd gotten to know how we work. I think that the first one of those hires was Nick, whom denied me my first proposition of joining me as CTO. And to this day, we talk about that as
I mean,
fun.
it makes sense, right? You're this guy who doesn't know anything about coding and never built a company, and he's an amazing engineer.
Amazing
Why
engineer.
why would he join you?
Yeah, exactly. So he denied me, and I just like forever knew that I wanted to work with him. And my co-founder back in the day, Brian, same thing happened. We got to know each other. It was a long courtship period where we were sizing each other up. We understood how we would work. And to Brian's credit, like, Brian was the first person to leave a job to join me. Like, he was the guy taking the huge leap of faith and trusting me with with his livelihood and what we did, and ultimately it worked out quite well for him and me. But this long-term courtship is something that's really kind of resonated with, like, something that allows us to tease out the really great hires from the less great ones. And so the and also making it more of a two-way process where, like, the person gets to understand me. I, like, this, I'm a polarizing human being, and so I'm much less polarizing than I think when you were in the company.
Properly.
It's passive the experience has pacified me a little bit, but I think you really have to like working with me in order to be incredibly successful at the company. And I'm just not for everyone. I'm not going to claim that I am. And so getting to know me deeply is a core part of kind of the hiring process for my executive team. And so, like, these long periods of courtship where everyone gets to know each other, everyone gets to understand their working style, is something that we did. And Chris Crane, who led product at Datalogue and now holds a very senior role at Nike, it took 6 months to hire Chris. Like, it took absolutely forever. And we got to know each other. Like, he came in, did a bunch of exercises with us, and product management exercises, got to size up again, like, how mature we were from a product management perspective. Turns out not at all. And he came in and he understood exactly what it was like to work with founders like me. And since then, he's been an incredible friend and someone I trust deeply. So I
And
think
I mean,
this,
we did something similar too, right? I mean,
yeah.
you came over for dinner at my house, and it turned into like a 3-hour plus dinner. After some wine, we're sitting there sharpening knives, which is probably not a very smart idea to do after drinking, but nevertheless, like, doing that over a period of time too. And it's really
100%.
credit to you that you're willing to. I don't think a lot of founders are really willing to put in the time and energy and effort to have those dinners, have people over. I think that was a really impressive skill set you had. You're like, I'm going to open up my house. I mean, I think you enjoyed it from a personal level, just enjoying having good conversations with people, but it also was a business proposition at the same time.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, I use cooking because, like, I'm a deep introvert, and so, like, I actually don't love the, like, one-on-one conversation or entertaining or any of that. So, like, when I'm cooking, I've got an excuse for, like, I'm not looking at you straight in your eyes, and, like, I'm kind of tiny bit antisocial. But I deeply enjoy hosting, and, like, it's something that my mom ingrained in us as we were growing up. And so it's like this weird marriage of, like, yeah, it's what I love to do and what I grew up doing, but at the same time, it's also like a total antisocial crutch for me. And I guess I socialize, and, like, I think I'm a decent host, but it's part of getting to know each other, and we get to know each other's personalities, how we think, and all those things. And even then, like, we've made mistakes, and that's okay. I think this, like, building the acumen behind, like, what is an incredible person for the company that you're building is something that's nuanced, and as you have more repetitions as a founder, you start to get a sense for. But, like, and I really want to emphasize for the company that you're building, because I we've hired incredible people where it just didn't work out, and it was not because those were not incredible people. It's just like it wasn't a perfect fit for the thing that we needed right there and then. And so I'm just deeply humbled by just how the folks who are kind of joining my teams just also lean into the 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 courtship aspect of things. And, like, I use the word courtship because, like, startups are kind of like a marriage. You're spending more time with your startup partners than you do with your life partner. So
100%.
it's a really important decision. And I think the best thing I've learned to do for finding these great people is just make it a two-way street, be transparent. That's how I run my teams, be super transparent and get to know each other deeply as human beings. And
Does
that's
that,
panned
I
out.
think part of it, what comes from that though, or not comes from it, but a predicate to that is your ability to know yourself too. So there's lots of people in the world who don't understand themselves. And of course, if you don't understand yourself, I imagine it's very difficult to explain yourself and your working style to other people. What do you think you've done, if anything, to understand yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the parts that people might not like? How have you worked through that? Because there may be parts of you they don't love, and yet that is part of what you get when you work with Tim.
Yeah, I mean, you've been part of that journey with me, and I've had to reckon with behavioral things that were just true from my personality. Like, I made a joke that I do MMA now because I used to get bullied, but that stuck a lot with me throughout my kind of personal life journey and my career, where the experiences that I've had as a kid were both formative in the sense that I got to experience a lot, but they also kind of deeply prevented me from creating meaningful relationships. And I creating those meaningful relationships with people is something that kind of took a long period of time for me to build up. And I just really didn't have the interpersonal dynamics skills or the ability to understand how to deal with my personal emotions. So like early in my career, I had a really shitty temper. Um, and I it was a skill issue. And I think recognizing that, and I don't know if you recall when we were in Montreal, I like sat the entire company down and was like, yo, I got an issue here. I have a bad temper and I need help. I need people to call me on my shit and to like continue to help me on this journey. And I think that was one of the deep kind of skill flaws that I had back in those days. And it's something that I'm still very conscious of and work through kind of across all the dimensions of my life. But I think what ends up happening is when you have behavioral aspects to how you lead and how you live your life that you want to change, the most important thing is just like recognizing that you're failing across those dimensions and then asking for help. And to the Datalogue team's credit, like everyone was incredibly welcoming to helping me and to help me kind of change. And to this day, I'm still incredibly grateful to that whole team. So I think I'm talking to my therapist this morning about this, where I think one thing that I tend to do decently well is I tend to be very analytical about my life and like the areas where I need to improve. I write like a goals document with all my life goals and what I'm trying to achieve, um, the things that I think I'm strong at, the things where I'm less strong at, like the things that really kind of get me excited and the things that trigger me. And so I'm very deliberate at doing those things. But like anyone who knows me in business and those types of things know that like I make decisions very intuitively, which is the polar opposite of how I tend to think about myself, think through my life and analyze my life. And so I think being analytical and just willing to ruthlessly address the issues that I face is kind of what's led me to kind of fix the downsides. And then the good sides, I think to this day I lean on leadership skills and kind of a ruthless passion for just getting shit done and working hard. And I think I get a lot of that from the role models I had growing up.
Well, and I will say, as someone who's worked for you, to your credit, I think part of why the Datalogue team was willing to kind of support you in that journey, it's because you come across as someone who is a leader and who knows where you're going, even if you're like every other founder in the world who probably doesn't know exactly where you're going, right? You have an idea, but you're
I
still
know the
figuring it
next
out every
step.
single day,
Yeah.
right? We don't know the right answers, but you come across someone who has that idea in that intellect to be like, I believe Tim is going to figure it out. I don't know if he knows the answer today, but he will figure that out. And that's real credit to you. On the other hand, like, I don't know if you ever knew this, but I remember at least slacking and joking with people back at Datalogue that, when Tim was a little bit, and I say this in the nicest way, but it was like, Tim was like the eye of Sauron. It was like not focused on you at all. And you're like off doing your thing and like getting things done. And then I would just come at you and be like this blazing bright eye, just like focused, like, holy shit, the full focus is on me and the stuff that I'm running right now. And I better have all the answers and get it right. And trying to that, I think that levels everybody up, but it was also sort of scary at the same time. And I'm kind of curious if you would define it as part of your management style, maybe it just was a Datalogue, or that's part of your style in general, or how you sort of run things. And I'm sure there's a much better definition than the Eye of Sauron, but how would you define kind of your management style and how you like to run a company and lead it towards success you had at Datalogue and hopefully success at 514?
Look, Datalogue, I was so inexperienced that I think I made so many mistakes from a leadership perspective and from a just even management perspective. I think a lot of those things came from just a sheer lack of experience. And throughout the journey of Datalogue, I like originally I was very opposed to like playbooks, process, those types of things. And I today am and like we don't see the bookshelf, but I like got a giant bookshelf. I I'm a voracious consumer of books and content so that I can learn and get better. And one of the most impactful books that I read was a book called Unleashed from this lady named Frances Fry. She's an incredible HBS professor, and she's decided to like try to concretize what it's like to be a leader. And the framework she uses is really interesting. She says for the in the room behaviors that she calls out, she says a leader fosters trust, builds a sense of belonging, and loves the team. And she defines love in a very deliberate way, where she defines love as kind of a two-axis mental model where it's high devotion and high standards. And we're both parents of relatively young children, and we know how love instantiates itself with parents. And like sometimes, right, you're very devoted to the success of your kid, and sometimes you got to be like, hey, that's not how we're going to behave here. And this idea of love is, I think, one that was really impactful for me, because she's very deliberate about using the word love. And this is, I believe, like deeply rooted in like masculinity over the years, and like what it means to like be a masculine man in the modern world. Like we just really haven't been in touch with some of the softer sides of being a man. And love is still, to this day, when I have some of my executives just like really have a hard time reckoning with like, hey, you got to love the team. They're like, oh no, it's tough love. And it's just, no, like get rid of the word tough. Like it's love. Like you really need to love the team. And so that's a word that really stuck with me. And I think the historically I've had a hard time balancing the three components: trust, belonging, and love. I've always been deeply devoted, but I think when I was holding people to high standards, I would lose sight of that devotion, and or like do so like how I was approaching the issue was either making them feel like hurt, the sense of belonging, which like safety is one of the core components to belonging. And so I think the over the years, what I've learned to do is just kind of hone in the how to approach kind of all three of those dimensions. Building trust is incredibly hard and important. Building a sense of belonging across all the axes that Francis describes is critical. And then like really loving the team, being there for their devotion, but holding them to a high bar is a incredibly difficult thing to do in the workplace, and something that every day I learn how to improve. So I think that's how I
How do
think
you
about
hold
it.
people to a high bar in areas of work that you don't know in depth yourself? Like what are the tips and tricks you use? Because you, as a founder, you can only know so much, and frankly, you should really only be an expert at one or two things.
Yeah.
But you have to lead a whole company filled with a wide variety of people with different skill sets. How do you hold them to a high standard without having the in-depth knowledge of their area of work?
Like every area of work has ultimately an outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? Like you and I have worked in sales, and so in sales, the the numbers are relatively easy, and then like the activities roll into those numbers. There's certain, it's always about like understanding what the leading and lagging indicator is for a particular domain. So let's pick apart sales. If someone's going to go and do like a big enterprise deal, making sure that they have a good grasp of the account. Have they mapped and understood kind of the different players, who their EB, who their champion, who their coach, who are their blockers? All of those things are really critical answers that a salesperson needs to have when you're sitting there and trying to understand how they're doing from an operational perspective. And so I think the the trait that I've learned is don't try to learn the actual function, try to learn what outcomes you're trying to
Mm.
like achieve with the function. And so and all of these things need to have leading indicators and lagging indicators. Revenue and sales is a very lagging indicator of success. And so especially early days, right? Once you have a playbook and all you have all those things, that the only thing that matters is quarterly revenue. But pre product market fit, there's a huge component of sales, which is understanding the dynamics of the organizations that you're selling to, and having salespeople who understand how to navigate that for your organization is going to be really critical. And also like when and how you hire salespeople is super important. So I think overall, my approach is just try to understand deeply from a first principles perspective what are the leading and lagging indicators for a particular function, and then hire executives that can manage to those leading and lagging indicators. And I think over time I've also learned to put in the extra cycle to make sure that someone can learn, and you create the environment to do that. Because if you're at the eye of Sauron, then like unfortunately the person like can't learn in that particular environment. And so I think over time I've become a lot more patient. I'm still a very impatient person, but like patient in the sense that I want to see forward progress and momentum towards learning. You do that by understand leading and lagging indicators.
So would you say, if you're like, think back to yourself as a first time founder, early in your career, hadn't done any of this, are some of the key things you would tell yourself, like, hey, have like that love for your team, build a team of people you trust in you can then give them that trust and give them an outcome that they need to focus on, and say, here's the outcome that I expect of you, and hold them to that. Like, what advice would you give yourself, your the early Tim as a founder advice, and the folks maybe listening to this podcast?
The only advice is just do it. Like, and that's right, quite
It's
fitting.
almost a perfect segue into the next part we need to talk about, but
Yeah.
continue.
I genuinely think that's the right move. Is like, you will learn these things whether you want to or not. And so get out there and do it, and be open to learning. Like, I think that's the issue with founders is that we're irrationally confident in certain things, and that overconfidence can come at the expense of learning a thing, like whether you're doing it right or wrong. So I think it's just like a constant challenge to make sure that you're willing to learn the shit while still being confident about the direction that you're going in. And I think the Nike mantra just embodies that really, really well. Like, just get out there, just do it, put on your shoes, go for the run, and you'll learn something about yourself. So I could have read all the books, I could have done all the things, and in reality, nothing beats just fucking doing it.
Getting the experience.
Yeah.
So as that perfect segue, so walk us through briefly why you decided to sell Datalogue, why Nike, and then even more important than frankly some of that is, what was it like going from your own startup, you are the man, you're the boss, to a massive, massive company. And yes, it has a great entrepreneurial story, but it's a massive company nowadays.
Yeah.
What was that transition like?
Yeah, we can start with why sell. So I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, due to their irrational confidence, don't necessarily recognize when to sell. And so I think we were quite astute. Hindsight's 2020, but the process of getting there was just really circuitous, and we captured luck. Okay, so like the person who acquired the company reached out on LinkedIn. I usually don't respond to LinkedIn. I happened to like be on the 13th hour of my day. It was like 11 p.m. and I happened to just respond to the person, get on the phone, and that's how she wrote, right? Like it just happened. But when it came down to actually making the decision, Nike came in. They did a very, very fair acquisition. Our investors made a ton of money. Even our Series A investors walked out, and we generated great IRR, definitely market beating returns, even for our Series A investor. And so making that particular decision was very, very difficult. Like, it's my baby. Been working on it for 5 years, and the 2 weeks leading up to the term sheet, I don't think I slept all that much. Like, I was clocking in a 3 to 4 hour night on a daily basis. And I was starting to feel really, really burned out. And I was starting to feel like my decision making capabilities were fizzling just by sheer lack of sleep.
Was this because of the potential deal with Nike, or because like things were just so hard at work? You're like, I'm working nonstop to like.
No, it was a hybrid of the Nike deal plus like running the business. So like, we had a real business that had real customers, like generating a couple $1 million in ARR, and like we were doing that. The company needs to keep going, and Nike was saying like, hey, we love to potentially acquire the business. And so like, Nike's a West Coast company, we were on the East Coast. I'd wake up early and then just ride that out till like 11 p.m. meeting with different executives, meeting with like different people who were excited about the value proposition that we brought to the table. And so just running that entire process was absolutely crazy. And when we ultimately got a term sheet, and we had one investor, Jeremy Levine, who to this day is one of my favorite people to work with. Like, Jeremy's a hard ass, and a hard ass in the best way. Like, I love getting challenged, or I don't love it, but like, I need it. So like, I would gravitate towards him. Roy Bahat's a similar kind of persona, like just loves to challenge people. And I was chatting with all these investors, and Jeremy was always like the last person I would talk to because I like wanted to have my shit wrapped up. And I go to Jeremy and it's like, hey, here's what's happening. And Jeremy had a really elegant way of thinking about the acquisition. He was like, just flip it. What do you mean flip it? He said, just flip the mindset. Like, would you be excited to go invest in the thing that you're going to do at Nike? And the answer was absolutely. Like, the this idea that like a brand like Nike that's just historically been all about storytelling and marketing would be willing to invest and go through a giant transformation to become more data driven was incredibly appealing. Like, to me, that's the perfect marriage between art and science, and like bringing those two things together. Like, the bridge between those two pieces is data. And so the value proposition for what we were going to accomplish at Nike was appealing, and just the sheer experience that we were going to gain for the entire team was incredibly appealing. Like, I think if I had mapped my entrepreneurial journey and like someone would tell me, like, let's say like when I was 16 and wanting to be a doctor, like before you turned 30, you will be a VP at a Fortune 500 company, I would have never been able to predict that. And I am so incredibly grateful for the opportunity that the team at Nike ended up kind of affording me, and for just the absolute incredible learning experience that it was. And so I went out there, tried many different things. Like we ended up selling the company because of Jeremy's insight of flip it. Are you excited? It was exciting. And hey, we made good money, great returns for the investors, for the founders, and for the employees. And we were incredibly proud of how we ran the acquisition, where we were transparent, and we brought everyone along for the ride. Like, everyone knew the second we got a term sheet, and it was super transparent. So I was grateful, and it was amazing. So then kind of comes the transition into the Nike ecosystem. And what I think is cool is the M&A team just did an incredible amount of work to kind of validate the culture and ethos. And it's funny that Nike used to be described as a group of pirates back in the day, and it was kind of what it felt like to be a startup coming into the big ecosystem. We were a big band of pirates who believed in product management and like starting small and then growing from there.
What was that? What was that like? I mean, so being, I think probably what the youngest ever VP at Nike.
I don't know. I'm
One of
sure.
the
I'm
youngest
sure
people ever.
some human got a fancy title in the early days that probably beats me.
Fair
But
enough.
I was, you know, like every time we had like the all hands VP things, I didn't know anyone who was my age, and it was really scary and frankly humbling to just be a part of this group of individuals who just had a incredible career and had learned so many things and had all of the scars to express the things that they've learned. But what was also interesting was my entrepreneurial journey, just and the cycles that we put in to do the work. Man, I had a shit ton of scars on my body too. Like, we'd made all the different mistakes. We'd been navigating these extremely large organizations. And so I I was incredibly intimidated by just like the gravitas of the people there. Like, Eugene Cook, this one of the VPs, just like the coolest cat in the bunch, and just super confident and like a really incredible leader. Ron Ferris, who's just like the coolest guy in the world, runs Nike Virtual Studio, like took sneakers from a tiny thing to like multiple billions in revenue. And just like these incredible people that work at this institution are just so inspiring. And it's like, it's super scary to be a part of that group. But at the same time, it's like, it's technology, it's data, it's all those things. And that's where I spent most of my career. So it was amazing. Absolutely
What was
amazing.
it like having? I'm sure you had this new role, your new VP coming in, brash young guy, and suddenly you have a big team, probably a lot of people who are way older than you, reporting to you, which is more rare in startup world, right? You might have some people who are a bit older. Like I was older, I am older than you, and I was reporting to you, but it's a little, but I was also a startup guy,
Yeah.
and now suddenly you're this brash new young VP who came in via acquisition, and maybe have a lot of people who don't know you, don't believe in you. How did you deal with that transition?
Poorly is how I dealt with it. I didn't listen to the one piece of advice I should have listened to when I was at Cornell Tech. we were incredibly fortunate to meet Omar Johnson, who's the CMO of Beats. They had just been acquired by Apple. And Omar was sitting in front of these like bushy-eyed students. And he said, look, I will give you one piece of advice. You have to listen to it. I know you won't, but you have to listen to this. When you get acquired, go be a couch. For
What does he
six
mean by that?
months, go be a couch.
Just absorb everything.
Just listen. Sit there, listen. And like if that couch started speaking right now, we'd be like, holy shit, the couch just spoke, right? So or we'd be like, okay, what kind of illicit substances
But
are
hopefully
they
the
on?
couch would say really intelligent things because they've been listening to all these conversations you're having and all the recruiting calls you're having and pitching calls you're having.
Exactly. But the thing that you end up missing is like the advice that you end up missing there is just the value of time and role. So in these large organizations, just having spent time in the role ends up creating a sense of gravitas and swagger that is really critical to success in corporate America. And unfortunately for me, I like went out, made a bunch of mistakes, opened my dumb fucking mouth here and there, ended up kind of picking fights that just didn't really need to be picked. I believed in what we were doing, but like in the grand scheme of things, they weren't the most important thing that we needed to do. And so I think it's just like, again, a humbling experience. Like most of the experiences in my career, it was learned just by making mistakes. And we did incredible things. We did incredibly poor things. And at the end of the day, what was cool is because I came from startup land, everything was cheap, right? Like a giant budget, but like wasn't asking for budget. Like in fact, I was like, okay, yeah, you want savings? I'll give you savings.
Yeah.
And so I think the entrepreneurial mentality was really cool because it allowed me to experiment, do different things, and work with incredible people. And we did super cool things like create a monorepo within kind of the team that I managed. It turned out to be a massive mistake, not because the monorepo was the wrong thing. It's just the wrong thing at that moment, given the skills of the team and given the environment that we were in. And so I got to learn a ton, got to operate at very big scale, very small scale, and everything in between. And so now I just feel like a more rounded out executive who has many different skills at this point, where got to hire people that are just incredible. Like Jorge Verona, who like came from Amazon, was just like this incredible leader. I was like, dude, I'd worked for you. And I got to bring him into the organization. And to this day, he's transforming. Scott Haynes was a distinguished engineer that I brought in from Twilio. It's just like, great dude. And it was just like, can't believe you're coming to work with me. And like that's the power of the brand and the power of an organization like Nike. And so to this day, I'm just incredibly grateful for everyone who kind of were part of our journey. And like I agreed to disagree with some folks, and it was I learned a bunch of things from an interpersonal dynamics perspective, and I made a lot of friends. So it was humbling and very, very cool.
Respect to all that. So mostly what I wanted to spend a little bit of time on too is, okay, so you're at Nike, humbling, learning all these different things, working with impressive people, making mistakes, of course, too. Why you're starting a family? Why jump back and decide I'm going to go start a new company and tell everybody briefly about 514? Why do it? Why leave this amazing company at a senior level? You probably could have had a really long, interesting career there. Outside of the fact you have the chip on your shoulder, you want to go donate $100 million someday. But like, why leave in general? Why leave now?
It was a hunger for speed, and so this chip on the shoulder and the philanthropic mission is one that I was just like, look, I can continue to spend years here, but like at the end of the day, it's a good time to build companies. It's a great time to build companies. High interest rates, like it's really like companies are dying faster than ever right now in startup land, which is like exactly the moment where you want to lean in and go and do it. And so there's a part of me that was just like, look, from a timing perspective, this is it. And I really appreciate that piece. And then you can operate at scale and you can do, but I would compare the feedback cycle in corporate America to be somewhere in between being an entrepreneur and a VC, right? VCs have a feedback cycle that can go up to a decade to see if their bets are turning into something interesting. Corporate America tends to have like a 3 to 5 year cycle on seeing the outcomes of the work that you're putting in, especially at the senior level. And startups is just like, it's immediate. You get immediate feedback. You start to see and you can measure yourself. And so there's kind of two pieces that I really care about. One was kind of my philanthropic mission, and two was just this idea of like, the thing I want to do is I want to hone the craft of company building. Like I want to learn how to do this really, really well, and I want to learn faster than I can when I'm kind of in a relatively slow cycle. And so the need to build, the need for speed was kind of the main factor that was driving me there. And so I just had to say thank you and goodbye. And I pleasantly humbled by kind of the willingness for uh, the organization to support me through that transition. It was an awesome time. So kudos to Nike. And I think now that, like, once I got out, I just started playing.
Quick question: Are there any key lessons you would take away from Nike? So for me, like I went and worked at Twitter. There's a lot of things I learned at Twitter of what to do, but also, of course, what not to do. I think in coming as a startup person for me previously had never worked at, well, not never, but had been a long time since I had worked at a big company. There's reasons why these companies got so big, and they do things in a different level, different scale that can teach you things. Because as a founder, you gloss over a lot of stuff. Are there any lessons you took away from Nike? Like, I'm going to make sure I apply this throughout the rest of my career, or at least the next few years.
Yeah, I think strategy matters, and paint the competition are like the two things that really stuck out for me. So this deep appreciation of what strategy actually means, which is like, to me, strategy isn't like mission, vision, fluff. To me, strategy is about how are you going to deliberately create a situation where people know and understand how to make the trade-off decisions on a day-to-day basis, is what I came out with. And to me,
and that's it's almost like culture, right? So it's strategy, but it's also culture, so the team can make decisions predicated on that culture.
Yeah, I think strategy is materialized through context, and culture is materialized through behaviors. And so that's the small nuance between the two. The two are critical and important, but you learn that culture is really critical and important in startups. But you start to appreciate strategy in corporate America, or once you operate at scale, because that's where you start to see how context breaks down as it goes and flows through the organization. And now that we're running a remote first company at 514, that context, that strategic context, is critical to agency and flexibility and allowing people to just go and do the best work of their lives. Yep. And so that, to me, this deep appreciation of strategy kind of came about from some work that Chris Crane and I had been doing within our group. And it's something that I carry with me to this day. Like, Chris has this incredible framework deck that we use for communicating strategy. We got to try the Amazon style white paper, which, to be clear, don't take that to Nike. It is a terrible cultural component there where everything's about glitzy PowerPoints and all that stuff. But like,
which do you prefer? Do you prefer the PowerPoint or do you prefer the memo?
Oh, they have both both of them have their uses. I tend to be a little bit more memo driven, but that's just because I like seeing the narrative and the full picture. But the story is very inspiring and it's very cool. So I think strategy matters was really one of the interesting lessons there. And then, like, this idea of, especially, like, Nike is a ruthless competitor. Okay. So Nike is larger from a revenue perspective than the 6 largest competitors under it combined.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
It's massive. It is the bully. It is, and they don't bully, but like they're the biggest dog in town. And so they're an incredible company, but by being so large and by being at the top of the food chain, you can very quickly lose sight of what the actual competition is that you're fighting. And it took a while. Eventually, our CEO kind of made the adjustments and kind of corrected it. But for the longest time, I was confused. And it was mostly because, like, we started during the pandemic. It was like, are we competing with Lululemon? Are we competing with Hoka and On? Who are we actually competing with? That wasn't super clear to me. Even though I knew the brand, it never really came out in the context of the strategy. And then, like, how do we measure our success? Like, the stupid question I'd ask in front of 400 VPs was always like, the CEO would be like, oh, the strategy is working. And I'd be like, how do we know?
I mean, that seems like a very legitimate question I would imagine asked, but I can see why people might be frustrated if you're the young guy asking that in some big meeting.
Yeah, exactly. So I unfortunately didn't have I had or fortunately I was naive enough to ask the question, and I loved asking that question. But I think having a good sense of who is the competition and what is the scoreboard it's a really important piece. And so in startups now, like painting our competitors, understanding what our differentiation is so critical and important. And it's a lesson I took away from the Nike days, and to John, Andy, and Matt's credit, who are like the big kind of leaders in the organization that I got a ton of exposure to. They were very good at, once clearly that was a gap, at painting the competition. And I I think that's a critical piece of great kind of organizational strategy and just motivating the troops, is just like clearly communicating like this is the playing field that we're in. Like, are we playing soccer or tennis, right? Like, important.
Yep.
And so understanding who the competition is, clearly identifying the rules of the game, and then going out and playing your best game is really important.
So is that how are you going to take that to 514? And when you think through and maybe give a quick high level overview of kind of what 514 is, why you still think there's a need that needs to be solved. And I will add, kind of before you get started with that, I was so impressed as a potential investor at the time and now investor, reading through the memo that you wrote. It wasn't just even a 6-point Amazon type memo. This was under 30 pages of in-depth thought on so many different things that you had opened up to your potential investors who were commenting here and there in places. And it was fascinating to read, but also frankly impressive to see the amount of thought and work that went into it. It doesn't guarantee success, but it was so in depth and so thoughtful that it engenders a level of confidence in your skills to build this future company that has never existed before.
I appreciate that, and I'm laughing because I recently watched Jensen's interview where he was asked. Jensen's the NVIDIA CEO, and he was asked like, "Would you do it again?" And his answer was like, "Hell no." And here I am doing it again. I Part of the reason why I'm doing it again is I have deep conviction around this market and what we're trying to do. So the to me the interesting insight here is just we're look I like we've talked about, I didn't come up with formal kind of computer science training. Like, eventually got a master's in CS and engineering, but like that wasn't me. I'm mostly a self-taught programmer up until I get to grad school. And so I pride myself in my hacking skills and my ability to pick up a framework. I learned to program using Ruby on Rails, and like eventually in grad school was teaching a class on how to build a Twitter with Rails. And I deeply appreciate the value of great developer tooling and great frameworks. Like, to me, the measure for a great framework is like, can any kind of developer just kind of pick it up and intuitively understand what they need to do as like the next step? And I think DHH and Ruby on Rails did phenomenal. Guillermo, Rausch, and Vercel have destroyed the entire landscape and like truly created an incredible framework and an incredible platform. And so I was deeply inspired by the improvements that we've seen over the years on the software engineering side. And then I started playing around with the data stack. I was thinking of different businesses to start, and I started to feel like there's just so much room to innovate in the data ecosystem. And the way that I like to think about it is just like, to me, the developer tools and the frameworks in the data landscape tend to feel like they're built for IT or specialists, not for business facing engineers. Like, when you're a business facing engineer, time to market is of the essence. Like, it's just got to work. It needs to be intuitive because you need multiple software engineers to work on the same thing at the same time. And today, the data engineering toolkit and kind of the whole data ecosystem tends to be very narrow in its focus. You need to understand deeply each one of these pieces of technology, understand the trade-offs that you're making. And at the end of the day, the development cycles are really long and slow. And so what we ended up doing was just kind of deeply analyzing the the kind of progression through the stack on the software side and started thinking about, okay, can we bring some of those improvements to the data ecosystem? So can we take the lessons that we've learned going from Ruby on Rails to Next.js to now whatever the next thing is going to be, and bring those to the data stack, make them intuitive, make them local first, make them templatized so that kind of anyone can get spun up very, very quickly and see the results of their work. And we have conviction now that like the answer is yes. And we ended up raising some capital. Flybridge and Dimension, or Dimension's a new investor on my cap tables, but I will absolutely love the team there. And Flybridge, Chip Hazard ended up investing in the round again. Like I kind of took Siobhan's advice and just surrounded myself with people I trust and kind of slowly building up the team. But like the goal is really to build this incredibly developer centric and developer friendly set of frameworks, workflows, and platforms that enable pretty much any software engineer in the world to do data engineering work. And like, look, there are 300,000 data engineers globally. If you look at LinkedIn data, there's 6 million software engineers globally. And so we think it's going to be a great market opportunity. It's going to be a wide array of deeply technical software engineers who are using these capabilities, but we think the market expansion opportunity is massive. So that's
Yeah, I
why.
mean, this might be a slight personal question to some extent, but I mean, my view is a little bit, everyone becomes a software engineer with the expansion of AI and Copilot. And I can just like tell my AI, I want to go write me a program to do X.
Yeah.
And now I'm a software engineer too.
Yeah, and like the downside of doing that is, well, now if it's easy to write programs, you also need to configure infrastructure. You need to pick the technologies that you're going to use. And so I equate it to developing on the front end circa like 2015, where the React ecosystem required that you choose all of these like nitty gritty little technology details, like what's your router, what's your state management, what's what. And now we have these great frameworks that just come with a bunch of defaults, and you can get up and running and put something in production in a matter of like seconds to minutes. And so the idea of same defaults in the framework, same defaults in the workflows, same defaults from an infrastructure perspective really doesn't exist yet in data, where like to build any sort of even remotely sophisticated data intensive application, you need an orchestrator. You're going to pick Airflow, Prefect, or whatever. You should pick Prefect. Big friends of what Jeremiah's building there. Am I going to use Snowflake or Databricks? Am I going to, like, all of these different capabilities you have to go and choose. And once you start to engage with some of those vendors, you'll realize they're very sales oriented, very big company oriented companies. And so getting started means potentially talking to a salesperson,
Probably worse.
configuring multiple integrations. And so I'm a big believer in kind of simplifying that whole ecosystem and enabling people to go and build these incredible data intensive experiences. And so not only is AI going to drive a need for a simpler programming paradigm, but also AI is now a core feature and functionality in every single application. And so when you think about, I like to equate having an AI copilot as just having an army of interns working with me. Like today, Copilot writes 60 to 80% of the code that I write every day, but I need to review the code. And so like it still requires a significant amount of senior engineer intervention. And so do we want all these interns working on shitty data? No, we need robust foundational data capabilities to be in place. And we need data quality to be managed. We need all of these things to be in place so that the AIs can actually write the code that we need them to write. And so I'm a big believer that we're going to see a Cambrian explosion of data intensive applications and products where kind of the data is actually a core part of their value proposition, a prominent part of the value proposition. And so I think what we're going to see is great need for these frameworks, these tools, these capabilities that sit within the software development cycle and don't necessarily live in the back office IT departments.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to see that become a reality, since I'm a huge believer in just being data driven and as many things as we can be as a company and team and Levy at my company, but just in general, I think it's so important to drive decision making with data. So to kind of wrap things up a little bit, one question I ask everybody at the end of all my interviews is, we talk about a lot of different pieces of advice. if you could distill that into one thing or just a super simple summary, what is Tim's one piece of advice to become an excellent entrepreneur? What does that look like? What is that thing? You're like, do this, and you have a slightly higher chance at a great outcome.
Be you. Don't listen to other people.
Respect.
the
I love that.
I really like Roy Bahat from Bloomberg Beta has this show called This Is Not Advice. And the way they position it is they say, hey, this is just our experience and we're sharing our experiences, but like, don't take it as advice. I think open yourself to learning from other people's experiences, but consider it just that. It's data and experiences. Go be you, go trust in yourself, get out there and get it done. And if you don't want to take the leap, like join founders who have taken the leap and can kind of de-risk that decision. But joining early companies pre-product market fit or even right after product market fit is just as thrilling. You'll learn just as much as if you go out and you try to be an inventor. So I go be you.
Yeah, no, or just do it.
Just do it.
But I agree. Actually, frankly, being an early employee can be just as exciting, if not less de-risk though. So it's a good trade-off. Yeah. But Tim, where can people find you if they want to get in touch? They want to learn more about Tim and your journey, or learn more about 514 and even join the company. If they will meet your incredibly high bar, where can people find you?
You can find us on 514.com. Super slick website built by our head of design. It's pretty awesome, and it's a cool ethos that we're building up. I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a blog called authentically.online. So highly recommend just kind of reaching out, find me on social, find me on the website, and we'll go from there.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being on today. Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful catching up in general for me, and just awesome to hear your story and where it's taken you. I know where it will take you in the future. And thank you for letting me be a small part of that journey as well.
Adam, always a pleasure.